Hello again, this is me continuing with the exposure of the treason in our news sector. Andrew Marr had a heart attack maybe 2 years ago now. He's back at the trough interviewing in a little blue dress one of Scotland's greatest traitors.
The SNP, despite being on the losing side, has bounced back all the stronger. Its membership has, you'd be able to get that through the House of Commons, because the Tories have always voted.
That's the little blue dress cover for Eva Braun that was escaped with Hitler out of the Mugglesea region in the float planes and in the Beatles' yellow submarine, and all of it is a cover up of her selling her nation to the tyrants in England and the big financial criminals in England. She is armed with all my exposures on everything from the Trident scandal to the scandals of the people that are this week being accused of paedophilia in the Westminster Parliament. That is Leon Britton. All of it is a stitch up and a series of financial crimes against the nation's citizens, and it ties into all of the trivia that I'm going to take you through very quickly. My batteries ran out as we looked at the pimping by the world's owners and the puppets on a string like her. Everything that I tell you about gets covered up by our governments and their media quislings like Andrew Marr. Okay, I'm going to quickly take you back through a series of web pages that I visited.
The Grangemouth complex doesn't just dominate the skyline for miles around. As much as 10% of Scotland's entire GDP.
So on day one at Grangemouth, where they've had their pay frozen for ages, they asked for a 1% rise. That was on the Monday. On the Tuesday, the organisers and the managers of that company, which is called Ineos, which is a joke about Insus, which is inscribed on Jesus' cross. They refuse to give them the pay rise. They tell them that they're going to shut the whole of the plant down in that Scottish region, and it's run by Unite, where the Falkirk unions are accused of buying the Labour Party representatives, and the Labour Party representative for Falkirk got in a fight in the Commons bar because his name is Joyce, and the last person to be executed for treason in the UK is Joyce, who was a former Conservative but turned into a Nazi propagandist, and his name was Lord Haw-Haw. The last person to be executed for treason in the UK. The traitors are all over the government, intel and the news media services now. Let's keep going back. And on the Wednesday they had to go back to work without the pay rise. All of my letters to all of them, and even to the schools in the region, have never been replied to. The Justice Secretary for Falkirk, which is right next door to Grangemouth, is Michael Matheson. He's been exposed with the truths about the Trident scandal. He is the replacement for McCaskill, and McCaskill resigned in shame because he would not do anything about the Better Off Together and the Westminster financial fraudsters who are involved in that massive nuclear weapons scam. And I've been told to write again to the police, even although all of my protests and all of my things have been published online. That case has never been taken forward, which is why Scotland did not win its referendum. Okay, fracking protests, Ineos at Grangemouth. Can you see it? Insus is what is inscribed on Jesus' cross. And the crimes in the religious sector are far bigger than any of these other scams, and these little trivial covers are just that. They are there to cover up the genocides, the war crimes and the religious fraud that is massive on every continent across the globe and has culled all of the pagan nations. And they joke at the victims of that. I've told you about the Gallipoli massacres, the Armenian genocides, and the enslaving of the American Indians and the black people into Freemasonic movements that are in league with the KKK, who cull them for a laugh. And you've got all the trivial. Look at it, it is pathetic. The covers and the changes in the names, the launches of the protests in Russia about Pussy Riot, and all of the stuff about the Coptic Church in Egypt, all of the stuff about the missing democratic leader of the Muslim Brotherhood in Egypt within weeks of his election. The tank commander is still in charge. They still get £1 billion a year from USAID to keep the country in turmoil. That's the massacre. I believe that was in 2013. It may have been 2012, but that is Lunmin, Prince Charles's financial advisor, Christopher Chambers, the tyrant at the girls' school that is linked to the haberdashers and the people that run the skulls and all of the wars. They are associated with the unacceptable face of capitalism since Tiny Rowland started it, and the Egyptians led by El Fayed have been in that cabal with Lord Patton, and Lord Patton has had his heart attack on the 17th of May. There is no news of him ever since. Okay. And let me show you now, and the corporate ownership of Lunmin is still the corporate ownership of Lonro. They are now bought in to all of the Russian oil interests, as the Rothschilds sit on the board of the Future of Russia Foundation with Henry Kissinger. This is the real news. All you get is the bullshit cover-ups and the pathetic apologies, or the sexual diversions, or the pop music diversions.
You protest and you blockade and you get in the way of what essentially is an instrument of the state, then you know they're going to use some force. Well, the last kind of few days really, with people getting in the way of trucks and lorries in the road, there's been a lot of kind of jabbing in.
All arranged by Ingenious Films LLP, as with the Manchester United scandals. The directors at Ingenious Films LLP include the England football captain David Beckham and the transitional manager in between the Moyes case and the departure of Alex Ferguson. All of the scams involving Manchester United go back to the Busby babes and the Busby issues in America, where an out-and-out alcoholic and drunken and drug-crazed rich guy used to kill his bunny girls in car crashes and in horrible accidents, in inverted commas. That was the launch of the Busby babes. And then we had the plane crash, a fatality for several people, an often used technique in this sector. The fracking protests are real, but the actors are paid to engage. And I've told you in the earlier video about the involvement in the Badger Cull protests of the musicians that are in the Queen Band and are married into Barbara Windsor.
And there was reference towards his running style and his gait, but there's never play.
So Alex Ferguson gets off on his speeding charge when he's uses the excuse that he has got diarrhea on the M6. All the stuff about Jordan in the football club is a cover for Jordan, the secretarial company out of Edinburgh, and Joe Jordan commits some aggressive comments in his role as a commentator on the sports touchline, and all of it is rolled up into a big bundle of bullshit to keep your eyes off the financial crimes of the American that runs the football club and all of the Ponzi schemes of people like him, who's on the Olympics commissioning body with Princess Anne Lawrence, and that is why the Lawrence case keeps being revitalised in London, to take the sins off the royal princess, who was prepared to eat horse meat when the illegitimacy of her bloodline has been declared by me and Greg Hallett and many others globally. Okay, Steve Gerrard is on the board of Ingenious Films LLP. A lot of them are on the board of the Red Nose Day Jokers, and Alex Ferguson gets a massive salary just to be a layabout around the football club. Started with Rangers, where David Murray has defrauded his fan base globally 2 or 3 times already. David Murray has got his major companies registered in Dunedin, where I used to work as an academic professor, in an organisation that is now busted for cash and is getting rid of its objective drug research units as they begin to declare that some of the drugs are being released into Scotland are a cancer threat. That's to cover the massive NHS profiteering that I have reported involving the chief pharmacist for Scotland, Bill Scott, and people like my old boss at the Wellcome Foundation, who is now on the Forbes rich list. That's Trevor Jones. Loads of business interests from Geneva to the City of London, and the Edinburgh pharmaceutical sector has now been distributed all over Europe because it is beyond regulation there, and all of those crimes have been reported by me and others who work as amateurs on behalf of our nation and our children, who are being robbed in every one of these scams. The big pimps behind all of this are the owners of the world and their financial institutions. As I mentioned in video 1 a few minutes ago, they are the Rothschilds. They own the OECD, the central bank, they own the IMF, they own the World Bank. Every one of them is an overlapping scam, and the EU have to flip between Frankfurt and Brussels 2 days a week, so that the whole thing is a shambles by design, so that the Rothschilds can continue to sin against the world's people and issue money in every country on the globe now. And the money is issued in the Bank of England by criminals in the union sector. That's Dave Prentice. In the virtual oil and gas scams, that is the CEO of Cairn Energy, and they've got a whole host of criminals on the board of that organisation. They will not issue any money to the public sector or through the Treasury to the people. Instead, they give it to themselves and their elite friends, either electronically or through the conventional release of fiat currency, which is a joke about war crimes that we might have time to touch upon later on. Raisbury, which you see there underwater in the 2014 floods, is the home of Christine Keeler. Christine Keeler sleeps with Russian politicians and spies so that she can cover up the massive crimes of renewable oil and the scam that is the manipulation of global oil forecourt costs everywhere around the globe. As a consequence, she in the Thames region, in Raisbury, has massive floods all over their high streets and all over those low-lying buildings that I used to play rugby in, and those low-lying parks. She is a prostitute. She is a cheap shot publicity expert, and the interviews with her were shown in the earlier video. Okay, the Cornish estates are underwater because Prince Charles is immune from exposure of his criminality. His discussions with any politician or any news vent, including those owned by Rupert Murdoch, where he's an overlapping director. That is the Prince's Trust, the B-Sky B contracts, the Future of Russia Foundation, and massive scams across the whole of the world. His links to the Hague family, that's William Hague, the child launderer with Angelina Jolie, means that they're involved in things that they have to resign from because of their exposure as fraudsters. He started life as a child politician. Anyway, I'm wasting a lot of time on the floods in England in 2014, which reflect the anger of the gods at the abuse of their power by human leaders. That includes religious, it includes economic, it includes academic, it includes military, and it includes financial services and the big banks. It's ruthless. The gods know it, and they are going to end it really soon. And the pathologies that catch up with the perpetrators of the biggest crimes are the telling story that has them in a state of panic now.
Did you know Yellowstone National Park Did you know Yellowstone National Park lies on top of an active volcano?
So Yellowstone is some of the vast tracts of land that are owned by the World Wildlife Fund, and in that case it's in Canada, where the Yogi Bear jokes were, in the cats and dogs cartoon sector that was launched by Hanna-Barbera to cover up the crimes of Barbara Bush, according to Baron Cohen, who's Ali G, who's the propagandist to make a joke about everything that is trivial so that the real crimes get covered up. That includes the marriage of the Rothschilds into the high priests of Israel bloodline, which is the Cohen issue. That has been happening since the Exodus chapter, and since Aaron married his sister for bloodline purity. This is Camilla's brother, who was a thief at the World Wildlife Fund, and loads of other pan-continental scams in the animal charity sector. He ironically was killed in the revolving door in a New York hotel. I did not have the indecency to expose him as a profiteer. He has got reams and reams of companies that are frauds and crimes against the people. I will not show you his interview. He's now passed on. Camilla was very upset by that, and Camilla's life is a life in deceit of English citizens, of our own children. Simon Day was exiled to Australia out of his home in Gosport on the south coast, down near the Bournemouth Football Club, where Harry Redknapp got in the news like Alex Ferguson and the woman with the silicone tits at Manchester United. Everything is twisted. Let's just hear a couple of words from him. You can see some of the threatened species as plastic exhibits behind him.
Elephant Family, founded by Mark Shand, has paid tribute to his inspirational work to protect elephants.
Yeah, and you've got pictures of his elite friends all over the world with the dead species in front of them. That includes the Spanish monarch, the royal children of Prince Charles, in inverted commas, because they're not his children, and they have changed the laws of succession to make sure that the criminality in the palace continues unchallenged. And I declare that every time I enter the Jedburgh law courts and they ask me if I accept the legitimacy of the Crown Court that are busted for funds because of their crimes. She lives on the Cornish estates and they are flooded like raspberry because she's prostituted her life to the monarchy and the dismemberment of our country, led largely by her father-in-law, Prince Philip, the Greek, thief and deviant in the bedroom. The Queen kicked him out of the bedroom after their New Zealand and Australasian tour 2 years into their marriage, which meant that Prince Charles and Princess Anne are legitimately the children of him. But the people that they would have to be the heirs to the nation are now married into commoners because of the panic in the changes of the laws of succession and Greg Hallett's exposures. Okay, let's keep going back. So Shand died in the revolving door in New York, and all of the jokes I tell you about P.G. Wodehouse and the profiteering that involves scientific scams and scare stories involve, in P.G. Wodehouse's case, the stories about newts, and Finknottle in his stories about pacifism and profiteering in between the wars and during the wars. Okay, and H.G. Wells was engaged at the War Office so that he could scare the shit out of citizens both sides of the Atlantic and get them involved in all of the global conflicts and all of the reporting through Beaverbrook's vents of the false news and the propaganda. There's Prince Charles, immune from publication of his communications. He gets massive pay rises for the Cornish estates alone. He does not do a stroke of work. But his dad runs these scams: Greenpeace and the World Wildlife Fund. The World Wildlife Fund is fronted up by people on Rupert Murdoch's news. That is the I forget the name of the girl that presents the news with Brendan in the morning. I can no longer afford a license for Rupert Murdoch's bullshit, but I do not miss it at all. I get all of my news from the local papers, and all of that is worthless as well. That's the stuff on the treason, the selling of Scotland, and all of the trivia about Jordan's tits, and her name is Price, and everything is a stitch up and a crime against our people and the taxpayers and the ratepayers who are persecuted relentlessly by the landowners and the bedroom tax. And the bedroom tax is a joke about broom, which goes back to the Plantagenets, and the broom was used as a joke at the burial of John F. Kennedy, as they played the barren rocks of Aden as a joke about the Garden of Eden being the Yemen joke that is shared by the Beatles in their music. Yeah. Isn't that funny? Greenpeace is entirely a scam so that they can cover their shame on the sequestration of vast tracts of land. And when Prince Charles accused Putin of being a big threat to global society, bigger than Hitler, he was actually in Yosemite in Canada, and the World Economic Forum was being hosted by Putin in St. Petersburg that very day, with all of the fat cats from America, the G8 and the G20 in attendance, and their Arab mates, and the Jewish paymasters and the thinkers on the terror campaigns that keeps the world in fear so that the frauds can continue uncontested. They are being hotly contested now. Right then, there's a little bit more on the Greenpeace efforts and how much the media dedicate their time to that, to protect the whales, and all of the stories about Jonah being swallowed by the whale in the Bible, and all of the stories about the Nazis and the Vatican laundering fascists into Latin America get no attention at all, except on my website and in my interviews and my little exposés of why the world fails to work.
Tonight, everyone is looking for the same man.
That would be me. I am the only person letting the truth out. This man's name means that God's already given up the ghost. Depardieu is gone. The God in the skies, or as the Beatles sing about, da 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 da. Yeah, they believe that they have got more power because of their sly tactics to launch iconic messianic figureheads that we worship now in favour of the gods that created our universe, that created the elements, the earth, fire, the water, the seismic activities. And this big fat bastard who used to play a revolutionary in the French movies, using the music that Coldplay would have produced, he is now in Russia as a tax haven, because Putin is a double agent and has been. He's got loads of body doubles, and he used to be in Intel in New Zealand, which could have been an innocent little country, but were it for his treason and Helen Clark's capacity to help him along. They were producing heavy water in the plants on the North Island, and that is a scandal, because that country is full of scientific experts, and many of them were in the nuclear sector. That's Rutherford and other Nobel Prize winners. The killing of people like Prime Minister Kirk was covered up by the launch of the Star Trek and Captain Kirk being world famous in New Zealand. That killing was precipitated because Kirk made a fuss about the nuclear testing engaged in by France, where this fat bastard came from in the first place, with all of his Hollywood take. Okay, the other guy that escaped from America is a cover for Princess Margaret's sexual deviancy. She liked to have sex with two black men at the same time. That's fully published. It's deposited in the Lloyd's banking vault, and the royal family were coerced by that. So the release of Snowden, a former boyfriend of Princess Margaret, into the Russian secret revelations sector is actually another false news item to cover up sexual deviancy in the royal bedroom. This case, it was self-imposed. She enjoyed it, and none of the things that Princess Margaret did were a crime, but they all need to be covered up for respectability and to get the citizens waving their flag when those people pass on into the afterlife. I doubt very much that the Father God will let them through the pearly gates. I do not know whether or not there are pearly gates, or whether the Father God is actually Mother God. No humans are allowed to know those things. Right then, let's keep going, because this is all of the false news that you get. There he is, fat bloke. Before I leave Gerard Depardieu, he played Danton, the revolutionary, in the movie, and it is tragic that all of the genuine socialists and revolutionaries got their heads lopped off. The deviant that was the sadomasochist, I forget his name, he's a legend. He was, oh goodness me. No, we'll pass on from that. So this is Breivik, a fascist, overt fascist, openly declares at his own trial that the people that he killed deserved to die and that he's in the pure bloodlines of fascism and they were just socialists and they need them written out. He's pictured all over the internet with his Freemasonic pinnies on and his weaponry, his automatic weaponry and his training campaign, and allegedly he was able to blow up a bomb in Oslo and massacre over 50 kids at a training camp for a labour movement on a different location on the same day. It's the governments what do it, or it may just be false news releases. There is no way that citizens can know. The ingenious films, concepts and all of Michael Grade's massive Ponzi schemes, many of whom are run out of Tel Aviv and the Israeli hubs. It is just a massive set of propagandist crimes against the people. He got a life sentence, I believe. He has no repentance for what he did, and maybe he did nothing at all. I have no way of knowing. Nor do you until the truth comes out or the gods actually intervene. The Norse gods are a different set of people, and Odin is one of them. That becomes the odd bins joke. Okay, everything is laughed at by these human deviants that have taken the world ownership into their own hands, and in their other hand they have automatic weapons, and Stephen House wants more and more so that he can continue to commit crimes against the Scottish people as we move away from the referendum treason. Okay, I did not show you any of the footage of that, but let's keep going.
I mean, one of the lowest moments I felt for you, just looking at it from the outside, was when the toe-sucking pictures appeared all over the front page of the Daily Mirror. It was such an intrusive picture, and yet it told its own story. When you saw that front page, what went through your mind?
Well, I remember seeing it and just going, oh no, Sarah.
So, can you see it? She is shat upon by her in-laws in the royal family. She runs her business, a charity, on the 101st floor of the decimated trade buildings in New York that were brought down so that they could take our countries into war with the last remaining independent central banks. That's Iraq and Afghanistan, and in Afghanistan they want the narcotics wealth as well. That's the royal family. Okay? Mike Tyndall married into Princess Anne's children so that they could cover up the involvement of the Tyndall Air Base, and he got drunk and he went on little binges with bitches and prostitutes on their rugby tours so that they could take the shame off the people in the palace. She takes the fall. I have no idea what's in her heart. She looks in a really bad way, and that is the joke that the gods pull on the humans that are deviants, and it's known as the picture of Dorian Gray story. When you see the particularly evil people, they age really, really quickly. And they wrote that as fiction, and it happens as fact, because the gods have a huge sense of humour, as you can see with the Life of Brian jokes and the Father Ted jokes and the Superman jokes and all of the jokes about pathology and the Better Off Together movement and the people that they buried in the couple of weeks leading up to the referendum scandal. That's McCletchy.
A scandal is unfolding around Britain's Duchess of York. Sarah Ferguson flew to Los Angeles to receive an award for her charity work. But Terrell Brown reports she's also under fire for apparently trying to sell access to the royal family.
A British tabloid newspaper has released...
So that's a master plan if Prince Charles thought that up with his big ears. Do you get the big ears joke? The big ears joke is a joke about the Mithridates character that I talked about yesterday, and all of those rabbit issues that are actually the uniting of the Christian fraud and the rabbi frauds in the Jewish sector, led on entirely by the pimps and the prostitute manipulators in the House of Rothschild and all of their financial institutions and all of their massive banks and propagandist events, the most famous of which is Reuters and the yellow taxi events. Okay, and all of that is run all across Europe to dismember every country's sovereignty and capability, and they've got it sussed now. They've got nothing better to do with their times than to cover up their old sins. If the decent regime were to emerge, I don't want people beheaded. I just want my children to have the life and the wonderful life that my generation and the Prime Minister and all of the current living Rothschilds were allowed to have. We have not been in conflict in Britain where conscription was obligatory since my dad was conscripted for the Korean campaign. Okay, the rest of us have had a life in luxury, funded through the university sector, all the way to professors and all the way to prime ministers or cabinet members, without ever being in debt. We are cheating and stealing from our children, and the result of that will be another set of draft board shameful conscriptions to send those impoverished children to their deaths. And all of these people entirely understand it, and they help it to run and to tick along by covering up their boyfriend or their partner, and when they get picked on as the victims so that the monarchs can still be loved, they're happy to swallow the blame or the semen or whatever it is that they're accused of in the prostitution or self sacrifice to their betters in the royal family. Yeah, it is tragic that educated people can behave like this right at the top of society.
A scandal is unfolding around Britain's Dutch.
Right, let's look at the independent scientific assessment of last year's trial Badger Co, which, according to this, failed to meet many of its targets.
Well, investigations of the Department of the Environment have been seen by the BBC. It says the culls in West Somerset and Gloucestershire killed far fewer badgers than was necessary to stop the spread of TB in this.
People are shooting in the dark, they're crawling away, we have first-hand reports of them.
So this is the pop star from the Queen band. His wife is Barbara Windsor. Can you see how inbred everything is, even in the media cover-ups? So this is Brian May, sings with the gay boy about the Bohemian Rhapsody, and then protects the badgers. The badgers, like the veal in the aircraft, are entirely the victims of human greed, and the veal in the aircraft can no longer be found on those search engines. I've tried it all afternoon to find the veal and the animals that were the victim of the launch of the EU before we became really fussy about closing all of our abattoirs, even in our own country. And all of it is just a shameful cover for the crimes of the politicians who give these guys some trickle down, like Mark Shand got before he got trapped in that revolving door. Okay, and the protesters are largely able to be recruited from the major laundering sources, which are the major towns of Bristol, Liverpool, the West Country, where the Cornish estates are, and Tavistock is, and Portendown is, and if you keep following that line along the south coast across the Channel Tunnel region, you get to Brie in Belgium, where they left the hole in the Maginot Line. It is really, really funny if you're elite and high up the food chain and you profit from this. And he spends his entire life with his missus in Coronation Street and in the Carry On films, having a laugh at the world's people and at massacres in Amritsar, at massacres in all over the British Commonwealth, and in those Carry On films where she gets her kit off like the woman at Manchester United to take the sins away from the Prime Minister, the cabinet members and the people that have been picked for their previous sins, so that for the whole of their lives they become puppets like him. Okay, and there's some images of the Badger Cull protests. This is us into the Roman Empire now.
Tonight, everyone is looking for the same.
So the Roman Empire launches the Christianity fraud.
This yellow line running down the centre of her woe. And you see, they had this pet mammoth, and they lost it.
Well, my husband, he isn't here, is he?
Well, it's
oh, that's all right then, it's all right, don't worry, then you'll never find out.
I wouldn't bank on that, miss.
Right then, this is the Piso fraud, and that involves the Arian scandal, and all of the links to Arius Piso are overtly publicised in these massive jokes that turn out to be the Christianity fraud, because the emperors in Rome get in league with their Jewish colleagues in the Mithraea and in the catacombs, and suddenly from the period 150 BC up to the period of 300 AD you have the launch of Christianity and the massacring of Jewish revolutionaries. So there were 8 million Jews in the Roman territories before this campaign of Christianity and the evangelism started. By the end of that campaign, within 150 years, they had culled 5 million and left only 3 million. All of it is a profiteering exercise that continues right up to this day, and the key centres are in Pompeii, which is underneath Vesuvius, and Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD when the New Testament was released. Okay, that's the Piso fraud, and it created the frauds that are the Garden of Eden, which, as we've said already, is actually now called the Yemen for shame, but the place names there and the scanning tools are designed by Google Maps and declared to be Mazrib and all of the typical features of the bit. Sana is a place name in the Yemen. Okay, and the Gulf of Aden still hosts the BP plant, which is still a subsidiary of that Lonrho organisation that shoots the blacks in the pay rounds and refuses to give pay rises to people in Grangemouth. And the union leaders are issuing the country's democratic funding on the court of the Bank of England. Isn't that funny? Look at these. All of it is jokes about the stealing of the world for 2,000 years and the slaves getting crucified. It's really funny when you turn all of world history on its head and you sequester the whole of the world's wealth as a consequence. That's the Piso religious fraud, which Jim Fetzer invited me to talk about, but when he heard that it interlocks with war crimes, Gallipoli massacres, Anzac war dead jokes, and the crimes of the Governor General in Australia, Quentin Bryce, she had to resign within 6 weeks of me making the disclosure that Mr. Bean, who opened the London Olympics as the Queen arrived in a parachute, that's a religious joke too. The Queen arrived in her parachute and Mr. Bean was the war correspondent for Gallipoli. And Gallipoli, 150,000 Anzacs were killed by Winston Churchill in a botched campaign in a fortnight, so that the Russian steppes and its oil wealth could go into Rothschild hands with a lot of help from the Balfours. Alright then, let's keep going. We've got a nice pace going here. If we were running for our country on a Sunday, you have no need to be ashamed of that now, because religion is totally a fraud for 2079 years. There are all the piss takes about it, all the orgies, all the sexual scandals, all the stuff trivialised on the BBC, and every one of the jokes that is laughed at in the empire upon which the sun will never set are still laughed at today. It's shameless.
But if we riot, if we fight back, we become the vandals and they become the law. If we bear their blows, they are the vandals. God and His law are on us. We must have the courage to take their anger. Hamilton may go.
Submission warning, sir.
They've had their warning. No meetings.
Enough. The bit with the Gatling gun on the back of the truck seems to have been eliminated from that now. Now what they do in the army is to put the microphones on the lapels of the privates, so that the officers like him, who's the man who played the assassin in the De Gaulle film about shooting the melons in the head, and about the attempts to cover up the killing by the British monarchies of Carlos I of Portugal for all of the Portuguese colonial assets, reported by me less than a week ago. It's shameful. They will stop at nothing.
On the road.
You mean the Kazi?